Thanks for subscribing to and downloading Plant Talk with your host, Fred Howard. Plant Talk is sponsored by Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens in Columbus, Ohio, featuring exotic plant collections and displays, seasonal art and nature-based exhibitions, outdoor gardens, and a variety of educational programming. fpconservatory.org. Now, here's your host, Fred Howard.
Good morning, Ohio gardeners. I would like to speak to advice based on a reality this week. Watch out, it's the time of year where the Osage oranges and the walnuts and, in a small degree, the hickory nuts are releasing from the trees. When said tree overhangs the roadway, a walnut can be almost a disaster. I was in my little open car and buzzing along, minding my own business. I saw, and I know from previous years, that this is the walnut tree. And I must have been at that precisely right speed where the walnut hit the back glass on the car, didn't break anything, instead of my bald gourd.
Well, that's a good thing.
It's a good thing, because walnuts don't weigh much, but when they're coming down and I'm moving ahead, there's bound to be a big, conversation.
I'm wondering which nut would have cracked.
Yeah, right. Well, I started thinking about that, too, and it scared me. The walnut might have won for sure. Well, it is that time of year. It is a beautiful time of year coming.
Oh, yeah.
Just in this past week, and I think I mentioned last week that we watched a sugar maple change by a little bit in the course of just one day. Well, this past week then, a lot of the yellows and some of the oranges have shown up. Some trees, my honey locust, for example, is very nearly defoliated. Some others are not. It'll be a progression, and it's just that time of year where if you can, slow down, get in your car, head for the Hocking Hills, or I'll just say farm country where the natural woods happens to remain, and just take a look around. There's something very interesting about driving by a cornfield where the corn ears are drying down for, waiting to be picked, and you hear a slight rustle because we were going very slowly looking at something else, and all of a sudden 3 turkeys walked out of the cornfield. Well, no big deal in a way. It's too soon to think about Thanksgiving, but at the same time, wow, very interesting situation.
I'm sitting alongside Fred Howard this morning in our Plant Talk studios. I am Mark Noose, and if you'd like to join our conversation, the toll-free number is 1-866-PLANT-TALK. That's with 2 T's, or 1-866-752-6882. And Fred, still quite a few things in color.
There are, and yet the list has shrunk considerably. That is normal and expected. But just to lead off my list, mums, asters, the little plant on the ground cover side of things, plumbago, and so on, are still doing quite a strong job. Russian sage still looks pretty darn good. So there are some things that come on strong this time of year, and some few things even come into their day in the fall. Our plant of the week has stretched into several plants of the week again, Mark, but at the same time, they are in their true glory. And then I reach back to an old-fashioned plant called Kyria, which I have mentioned before, a beautiful, bright yellow flower, and it still has flowered literally all summer long. Out of 5 plants, there's only 1 flower in bloom right now, almost cheating, but it's still a brilliant yellow against the green.
And once again, our toll-free number, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's, or 1-866-752-6882. We also have some email questions that were sent in to Fred this week. So we're just getting started this morning on this edition of Plant Talk, and we're glad you joined us. Please stick around.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Walk amidst tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
Welcome back to the show. Mark Noose along with Fred Howard, the Ohio nurseryman. And Fred, Boy, looks like Fred's going to lay one of his technical names on us here.
Yes, I am. I'm starting it because I have used this plant before this time of year. I'm going to start with Ilex verticillata, which boils down to being, in our normal language, winterberry. Now, winterberry is kind of a general term like Frigidaire. It covers a number of models or types of plants. They are, however, all in the holly family, but this group is deciduous. They do lose their leaves very shortly, and that is an extreme advantage in this case because plants named Winter Red, Afterglow, and then one called Apollo, and my very favorite for me personally is Sparkleberry. They are, when they're indeed brilliant right now, the fruit might color just a little bit more, but when they defoliate, they are just something. I think, in that I have seen it happen, I think robins can see it from 1.5 miles away. I have looked out my bedroom window down onto the several shrubs that I have, 1 male and 2 females, so that the male is kind of in the background from the ground level. But up top, I have seen, when they're in full movement, I've seen what I know to be 30 robins dive bombing that plant, landing, picking, taking off. It's kind of a you all come type of thing, almost like a family reunion. You need to consider them for the color they give from probably 2 weeks ago on through, well, past Thanksgiving sometimes. Depends on when the robins and the cedar waxwings get hungry.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, they will come in for the buffet.
They do. They do. And then the other plant is a perennial. It is anemone by name. Anemone is a fall bloomer, pinks, whites, and so on. Some varieties, some varieties at around 18 inches tall. I have one called Honorine Jobert that is a brilliant pink on the light side, but it's still a brilliant clear pink. And it stands probably 30 inches high to the top of the flowers. I put it in a area that is well drained, or as well drained as my soil can get. It is slightly shaded by virtue of probably no direct sun after 2 in the afternoon, full morning, and they are absolutely brilliant, or have been for the last couple of weeks. As such, the two of those, one in brilliant red and the other pink or white, depending, are something to behold this time of year, along with the asters and the mums.
And I know last year you brought in some beauty berry.
Yes.
Remember you brought in 3 or 4 different types of berries, and boy, that I thought that's about the most beautiful plant I've ever seen.
I walked around and I ran out of room in my own yard for the way this plant grows. So I gave one to my neighbor, planted and all. It is in its full glory right now. It has. Well, again, Calocarpa is its technical name, and they flower. They fruit in the period that we're in right now, and there are several varieties of them. Mine happens to be early amethyst, and the color amethyst is the predominant factor there. It's a plant that you cut back in the spring. You treat it more almost like a perennial. It flowers on new wood, as we call it, and my neighbor's plant probably has 35 or so branches in it that have grown up and out. The plant is probably now 4.5 feet wide and 2.5 tall. Every stem on that implant or branch, whatever you want to call it, is just chock full of amethyst berries. And yesterday afternoon, when I was looking around, was the sun was out and brilliant at that point in time. And wow, I don't know. I suppose somebody with sharp enough eyes could see that 100 feet away. It is really spectacular.
This is the time of year for that. Let's go to the phone lines, and Pat's on with us. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning.
Good morning. How can we help you, Pat?
Well, I have a question. There's some black-eyed Susans that I have planted out by a utility pole by the road, and they're going to widen the road here real soon, and I'm thinking I need to move these black-eyed Susans because that pole that they're planted around is going to be moved. What's the best way to do that?
Well, it's interesting that you ask, because one of the topics I made a memo on to talk about this week is transplanting, and transplanting can be of big trees and shrubs, then right on down to perennials. How long has your plant been there?
A couple years.
Okay, so there's a good chance in that time that it has divided itself or put out secondary plants and so on.
Yes.
You have a choice then in a 2-year-old or so to dig the entire plant and move it in its total. Or, if you're careful, the odds are you can kind of dig the plant, either lift the whole thing up and then split it when it's above ground, or you look for what I call cleavage points. You look for main stem bundles. Sometimes you get in trouble on this because you don't know quite what's underground. But if you go down between two stems that are separated by an inch or two, the odds are you're going to take roots out on both sides or with two plants. So you can actually transplant and divide at the same time at this point. Right now is good. I wouldn't say you have to do it between now and the ball game tonight, but at the same time, I would go ahead and get it done in the very near future, because they are not terribly deep-rooted. They're prolific as the rascals can be, but they are one of those plants that if you dig it now, move it, it will put out some root growth, but it will not lock in, shall we say, for in the late fall, even though the soil's still warm, timing is right, and so on. So when it comes later in the fall, you'd want to mulch it lightly, and then when you plant, plant and water that day. Then in about 3 days, water again so that you get the air more or less out of the soil. We don't want all the air out, of course, but then when you have that done, I don't think it would make a big difference, but I would not be inclined to fertilize the plant at this point. I would for sure mark its place and fertilize in the spring to give it a pick-me-up and get it going. But right now is an ideal time. I would dig and divide, or just simply dig and move, and you might as well, because every worker around that pole is going to have size 14 shoes and stomp it to death. So go ahead and get it done right now.
Now, if I dig them out and I need to put them aside for a while till the pole is moved, if I want to plant them around the pole again?
Not a problem. Just simply if you have some old mulch, some leaves, some compost, anything that will just keep the roots from drying out, you could set them aside and go 2-3 weeks. Now, you're going to need to water along the way, but above the ground, and covered so they don't dry is all that you need to deal with. I think I'd probably put them out of the sun on north side of a shrub or the house or whatever, but go for it. I don't see any problem with getting it the way you're talking about.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thanks so much, Pat. Once again, our toll-free number, if you'd like to join the conversation, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's. That's 1-866-752-6882. More questions for Fred coming up. Stick with us.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Walk amidst tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
And welcome back to the program. Mark News here alongside Fred Howard, the Ohio nurseryman. In addition to calling on Saturday mornings, you can always email Fred a question. If you get a minute during the week, just email it and he'll answer it on the next program. Just go to our website, planttalkradio.com, and click on the Ask Fred button. Or you can email Fred directly, fred@planttalkradio.com. And Tom writes in this week, and he says, I had spotty growth on a new yard, and I need advice for fall and winter.
Okay, now, that doesn't explain what is spotty, but at the same time, I have seen it. In some cases this summer, it was a disease factor. There were a couple, 3 that were out there, especially early on with the high humidity and so on. And some never recovered well. Others, and it was strange to me, I haven't heard anybody dealing with chinch bugs in quite a while. Now, they're always out there, and they are a little rascal that cuts the grass loose right below the crown. I have several stories. One is particularly funny where the client was a psychiatrist. had some people come to the home, and I was